by negotiating, we don't always get what we want, right? And so the success of negotiation isn't hearing yes, it's sometimes engaging in the process in a way that is professionally appropriate and frankly authentic based on what we know we need, right? I'm also very much, and I could pull up about 80 different articles for you that talk through this a little bit more in depth, but salary negotiation is very much a gendered issue. It's very much a socioeconomic status issue. It's very much a race issue. It's very much identity connected in expectations, in how it's received, etc. And so let's just name that straight out of the gate, right? And I mean, there's research that shows pretty clearly what the results of women negotiating, what that means for women of color, what that means for folks who might not have the social capital to learn about salary negotiation and how that impacts their long-term financial health and stability. And so there are a lot of factors that impact that, and so let's be talking about that as well in addition to literally how do we do this stuff, because I just think it's important. Does that make sense? Okay. So where do I recommend you start? And everything that we talked through today should be in that handout. If you're a note taker, please feel welcome to it, but knowing that it's the last week of the semester, maybe taking notes is not something you want to do, which is also fine. But before you apply, or if you're already applying, that's okay too. We're starting right now. What are your deal breakers and what is your bottom line? Can you answer that question? So if I said to you, not as an employer, but just kind of as me in this moment, do you know what your minimum salary needs to be for your definition of financial security and success? Would you be able to answer that question? Would you be able to give a number to yourself? That's where we start. Because you need to know what you need and how you define financial security and success to move forward in the negotiation process. Because if the first time you're thinking about that is after you received an offer and you're sitting across from an employer negotiating, I think it's a little too late, at least to come at it from a place of strength, right? And that's where we want to come from negotiation as confidently as we can be. And so, how do we figure out our bottom line? Well, step one is we need to make a budget, right? For either life over the short term, if you're applying for something maybe for a semester, for those who are current students, or over the summer, what's our budget need to be? Or for those who are thinking more post-grad, what does my annual budget look like after graduation? And so a few things to keep in mind in that way. Budget items to consider, if you will. We have rent, which if you're living in a major metropolitan area, is pretty serious, particularly the lovely District of Columbia region that we're all currently in. Loans, student loans, car loans, other types of loans that exist for you, electric, water, etc., utilities, cable and internet, unless you cut the cord, in which case that might not apply, cell phone, food, groceries, travel. And travel does not, in my mind, always mean recreational. That can mean for family purposes, unexpected events, work or professional development, but money that you would need to set aside. Parking and transportation, so more the commuting side of travel, whether that's, in our case, metro, or driving yourself, or Uber, or bus, etc. Health and wellness, so that can mean annual prescriptions, if you're like me. I am lost without my contact lenses, so that is an annual expense that I have that others may not have, right? Medical expenses are something to keep in mind. Gym memberships on the wellness side of the house. Family responsibilities, family gifts, family experiences, whatever that's true for you. Fun, yes, budget for fun. Financial security / savings, how much money you hope to put away on an annual basis. Either for retirement or for specific purposes. And I'm probably forgetting some things, right? But think about what your either seasonal, for that season that you're thinking about applying for something, or your annual budget will be after graduation. There are some great apps for that. Not that I'm saying go download something today, but one of the things to think about is something like, I did some mini research online, so I'm not endorsing, so find what works for you, but Mint is a pretty good option in terms of an app that helps you with budgeting, where your expenses are, etc. There are others, but that can be a place to start. And then from there, geographic location, which we touched on a little bit. But living in DC versus living where I grew up, which is the primary industry there is dairy agriculture. The cost of living looks very different, right? But the salaries also look different and are reflected in that. And so knowing where you see yourself for either a summer, fall, etc. opportunity or for an annual post-graduation opportunity, it's important to take cost of living into consideration and get a little bit more context about that. So we've got some places to work, right? So we're getting some information about what's my bottom line, what do I need to be financially secure, and however I define financial success moving forward. Because frankly, that's a values-based decision. It's no one else's place to tell you what success looks like, right? You choose that. And then we use some research to back that up, but we'll get to that part. So does that make sense as a foundation? Okay. When we're talking about negotiation, we often focus on salary, which makes sense. But there are also other things that you can negotiate as a part of a job offer. And so things to keep in mind in that space. Maybe what's important to you outside of salary is a flexible schedule, or the opportunity to remote work or telework on an ongoing basis, either like consistently one time a week or when you need to for family purposes or travel purposes, right? That can be negotiated. When your annual review takes place can also sometimes be negotiated. Some companies have more stringent policies about that, but if, let's say, they're non-negotiable for salary, but maybe they'll negotiate revisiting the issue in 6 months and put that in your contract, as opposed to waiting a full year, that can be something that can potentially be negotiated, again, depending on the culture of the organization. Tuition and professional development support can sometimes be negotiated. That is, again, some of these things will be naturally embedded in a benefits package, but it's something to think about. Like, is my professional development a priority for me? What are my plans in terms of additional education, credentialing? Tuition doesn't necessarily, in my mind, need to be a 4-credit, like a Georgetown experience, although it certainly can be. There are other types of professional development conferences, et cetera, that maybe they'd be willing to support you if that's something that's a priority. Vacation time and start date are often negotiable, particularly start date. You're going to hear me say exceptions a lot tonight, but it's because I don't want to sound like I know everything about every employer, because I don't. But think about, if you're applying for a position and you have a family wedding, or a trip planned, or just something where you need a break. If you are currently working and currently a full-time student, and the idea of going straight into a job a week after you get your diploma is a recipe for burnout, and you're needing some time to just take a step back, you can negotiate start date. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. Relocation assistance or assistance with commuting, transportation, etc. can be something that you can negotiate for. A transportation stipend is probably a better way to say that. But again, know what's important to you. Like, yes, let's negotiate salary, let's talk about how to do that well. But what else goes into this process that's important to you moving forward? What are your must-haves, both in terms of salary and assistance, benefits, health, wellness, etc. That's why we do all this work on the front end. Because again, if the first time you're thinking about this is when you're walking into an office to negotiate, you're not coming to it, I should say, from a place of strength, and that's what we want. So is everyone willing to do a little homework after this, maybe after finals? Okay. All right, so you know your bottom line. Now what? Right? Research tools. So how can I gain some context about my industry? So if I know what my bottom line is and what financial success looks like for me, does where I'm applying meet that range, right? Or what exactly is the range for the industry that I'm targeting? Sometimes we're going with very little context. So how can I get that information? Now, if we have enough time, sometimes using faculty and alumni at Georgetown are a great way to get that perspective. So that can sound something like, what can I expect starting out? I'm trying to get a better picture of this industry. What have you seen? What has your experience been? Talking about money is a touchy issue, right? So asking someone like, so how much money do you make? Probably not going to fly, especially in a professional context. But, you know, based on your experience or individually or from what you've seen from a hiring perspective, what can someone starting out in this industry expect? Or what's the range? And so conversations can be a great way to get that context. Hoya Gateway is a resource, alumni-based, that you can actually reach out to alumni. Another one which I award myself no points for forgetting to pull up, the Alumni Career Network. And so both of those resources are online databases where alumni have put themselves in there, so they want to talk, right? And are searchable via your NetID. And so you should have access to that. And it has their contact information. So they're basically saying, I want to answer questions. And it doesn't just have to be about negotiation. It could be about workplace culture or how they're using their Georgetown education. It doesn't have to be limited to just this, certainly. But if I know I want to talk to someone, I don't know. Anyone have any fun companies?
B. Riley Financial.
B. Riley?
Yes.
Can you tell me if I've got this right?
RILEY.
There it is. That?
Yes.
Okay. Roll the dice. Sometimes I do this and I crash and burn. I should really just pick an employer. I know that's not. Oh! All right. Now let's do, I don't know. Hey, Spotify. I don't know, I just picked that because I like music. I'm sure you all have individual interests in that way. But you could also search by industry, and so if you're looking specifically in a division within finance, you could search by that and see companies. Even getting a lay of the land within a specific market can be a place to start as well in terms of identifying your value. But if I wanted to speak to David, I just click in, and I can either literally just click send an email, and it goes through my NetID and everything like that, or I can get a little bit more context, whatever they've chosen to share. And so, again, this is me cheating, and so I'm fully owning that moment with all of you, because I know that there's a fair amount of people who work there. Google, right, in different roles, etc. So just know that people can be a resource in addition to databases in terms of getting some information. Another resource to get some more context on salary is something called Glassdoor. Glassdoor is known primarily, I would say, for reviews. But here's the thing about the internet, guys. People only review things when they're really happy or very unhappy. At least that's been my experience. And so please take the internet with a grain of salt in terms of reviews. It can be helpful context, but it is the internet, and when people think they're anonymous, as we've seen in other contexts, they think they can say whatever they want. So it's true for this. I am curious. And so these are folks who, again, have posted. If there's only an N of one listed, that might not be as helpful, but if there's a few listed, you can kind of get a range for what's out there. And that could be done for other companies as well. So just something to keep in mind and trying to get a feel for the lay of the land.
Is there a way to see like when people posted the salaries? Because I've heard the criticism of Glassdoor that a lot of the salaries are old.
I agree with that. They haven't made, as far as I know, they still haven't made that function available. Yeah, I agree. Salary.com pretty much people are familiar with, I think, if you were to Google salary calculator, I think this is the one that would come up. I like the NACE salary calculator, maybe a touch more, but I think you're welcome to use both, in that it goes by state, region, occupation, years of experience, education achieved. So it just gives a little more context. I think it tends to run a little high, but again, it's one data point in your research. And finally, knowing that we are in DC, the OPM general schedule gives information about government salaries. So folks who are considering that, knowing that the federal government offers opportunities across the country, can search, if I wanted to see the annual rate for being in Buffalo versus Boston, I think that's going to be a little bit different in terms of salary and even cost of living. So just helpful to think about all the ways that you can gain data points moving forward. Questions about that? I threw the kitchen sink at you with databases. I promise it gets more fun. Yeah.
So I don't know if this was common
Yeah.
in corporate world, but when you say we talk about the contract 6 months later, and that 6 months you're working with employees, is it common to gossip with each other your salary, and then 6 months, 12 months from now be ready to negotiate better, or is that common? I don't know.
I mean, I think it is common to have those conversations, particularly around review times. I think bonuses and annual salary comes up. Again, some people choose to be more private in terms of their workplace relationships and sharing how much money they make. But I know even on campus, I've had conversations with folks who have similar job title in different offices, and mine have been like, you know, tell me a little bit about compensation. How's that changed for you over the past year or not? And frankly, the folks that I'm close to in other settings, I've just asked because I built that rapport and I feel comfortable doing that. I think all of us could benefit if we were more open about talking about salary in terms of advocacy, but that's more of a personal opinion than a general, like, I think everybody would say that. It's a good question. Okay. Sometimes we're asked to give a salary as a part of an application. Has anyone seen that? Where it's like name, address, salary requirement, and you're like, wait a minute. Like, I haven't even gotten to the upload resume portion of this form, and you're wanting me to know about how much money I'm interested in making. I know that can be a point of anxiety for folks. A couple of things to try. One of them is sometimes those boxes, although this is a little less frequent now, don't require a digit, and you can write negotiable. I think that I want to maintain as much leverage as I can as I move through this process, and so I will usually try that first. I think now, with the technology world improving as it is, I'll try that and it'll say, nice try, input a number here. I'm like, but I think it is worth trying just to kind of move forward from that, and again, a way that maintains our leverage. And this is why we started with knowing our bottom line and doing some research, so that when we come to this portion of the application, we know what's appropriate both for the industry and the geographic region and us. And so whenever possible, I try to put in a range, usually between $5,000 and $7,000 within, and please don't ever put anything in that box that you would not be willing to accept. Because it is a way to undersell your value and oversell your value. I don't know, I mean, I think I know why employers do that, but it's probably one of my least favorite recruiting tactics. But if you've done your homework and know what you're looking for and what your value is, it's not something to shy away from. And do not undersell. Don't put something in there because you think it's what they want to hear, but it's not something you reasonably take. Because then you're going to be offered a position and they'll say, well, it says on your application, and you just don't want to be in that position. So range if we can, usually between $5,000 and $7,000.
So this gets a little tricky as well, because some in their initial screenings,
Yeah.
if you're too high, they'll automatically throw your application out
Yes.
without even considering, like, that's their first level of, like, that's their first filter.
Yeah.
And so how do you, what happens in those situations? I mean, not necessarily getting it thrown out, but how do you try to circumvent that?
It depends on how much time I have. I think one thing that I will try to do is ask the recruiter or human resources about what the range is. And so if it's a phone conversation where that happens, say it's not a piece of paper, or excuse me, a form that I'm filling out, but it's an initial phone screen and they ask me what my salary requirement is, I'm usually saying something to the effect of, you know, I'm sure that we can come to a salary that's going to work for both of us. Could you share a little bit more about what a typical range for this position is? And then that helps me too, because if they say something that's below my bottom line, I'm going to follow up right there in that moment and say, is there any flexibility with salary? And if they say no, then I'm not going to move forward with that process, because there's no way for me to meet my basic needs for stability and success. If it's in the form, that's just harder to do. That's why I want to get as much context as I can, potentially by calling. There are some forms that it will literally say, please do not call, like at the bottom, in which case I try to respect that. But the beauty of calling is you don't have to give your name. So, hi, I'm a candidate interested in the assistant director position. I noticed online it said the salary was to be representative of the person's previous experiences. Is there a typical range for this position? I mean, they don't have my name. They just know I'm a candidate interested in, and maybe I'm getting some context that helps me fill out that form or not move forward, depending on what I want to do. But is that helpful at all? Yes, ma'am.
So my friend is currently in this stage, and I also wanted to know the answer. So when they asked for a minimum requirement or minimum desired salary, she gave a number, and when she was offered with a higher range.
Yeah.
So she wasn't sure if it was still okay to negotiate, even though they offered a higher range than her desired or her minimum salary. Is it still okay to negotiate, or is it awkward because they did,
I don't think it's awkward. I think if like your approach needs to be representative of you, so let's say you're concerned about being perceived as asking for too much, I will usually ask about flexibility. So if I'm made an offer, in that particular case, if I'm someone who's worried, I might say something like, thank you so much, I'm very excited for this opportunity. I was wondering if there's any flexibility with the salary. Because you're not going in for a no, you're just learning about where their mind is at in this process. And we're going to talk a little bit of this as we go, but think in I, but speak in we when you're doing negotiation. So you need to be advocating for yourself, certainly, but make it a collaborative process, right? I'm sure we can work together to come to a salary that's going to work. I'm really excited about this opportunity. So just a little language-based tip, think in I, speak in we, particularly when you're in those moments or in writing. One of the things that I know I wanted to touch on was make sure you receive an offer in writing before you move forward with negotiation, if at all possible. Sometimes they catch you at an end of an interview if they're very excited about your candidacy and want to talk right there. We can't control that, certainly. But I want to see it on paper. And that paper will also usually give me some links and information about additional benefits, which helps me understand fully how I'm being compensated, both salary and some of the other benefits that we talked about earlier. So, someone might call you, and this is a very exciting thing. We're talking about it in a very challenging context, right? Negotiation. But if you're negotiating, you got a job offer. This is really exciting, right? And so, keeping that in mind, sometimes what will happen is, if someone's calling me, I'll be like, wow, I'm really excited, I made it through the interview, right? That's great. And they'll be like, so, are you interested in accepting? And every part of your body is going to want to scream, yes, especially if you had a really good experience with them as a part of the interview process. Say, I'm really excited about the opportunity, really excited to move forward with you. I know you mentioned the salary and some of the benefits. Would it be possible for you to just email those over so I can take a look? And I can't wait to get back to you. So we remain positive and affirmative and excited, and we're going to figure out what the heck's going on here, thinking in I, speaking in we, to move forward in a strategic way. So that's one option. If it's asked in an interview, which is kind of one of the more challenging pieces, things that you can say. So believe it or not, we have a things that you can say page on page 3. I really want to preface this with, here, can we hand that? Does anyone not? Yeah?
4 back here.
4? Thanks, guys. Everybody else good? Okay. And so, avoiding the direct salary question, as is listed there, is usually something that happens in a phone screen, like the very, very beginning where you're like, we're just getting to know each other. Hold on here. And so I'd really like to learn more about the position before we talk about salary. I'm sure we can come to something that works for both of us. That will usually move people along, right? And then ways to start the negotiation process and framing it. I think one of the things that's important to say as well, do not negotiate via email. I know it will feel easier because you don't have to sit across or video or phone with someone. You cannot hear tone in an email, right? That's important when you're negotiating. Because something that I'm sure you guys have gotten those text messages where you're like, was that sarcastic? Like, did they mean what I think they mean in that? Or emails, right? Like, even among classmates or from professors where you're like, are they mad right now? Like, is this really happening? Stay away from email for negotiation purposes. Use the email to schedule an opportunity to speak on the phone, via video chat, or in person. But use your human voice to do your negotiation for you. Because you don't want to be perceived in a way that you didn't even intend because of how someone read it and potentially the kind of day they're having. Right? So in your email, you should mention that you'd like to talk about the offer. That's another mistake, is to be like, could we set up a time to talk? Because people are nervous about saying about the offer or about salary. But if I'm the recruiter, my perception of that might be, oh, they're just going to accept. I don't need to prepare anything. Right? And you want to set up the person you're negotiating with well to be able to help you. And if they don't know what you're going to be asking about, how can they possibly be prepared to help you? They might have to reschedule the call. Or they might be like, I'm the recruiter, but you need to talk to our, your manager or this person about negotiation. They handle that budget, or they handle that line, or it's an HR thing. Every company's structured a little differently. Your primary point of contact may not be the person that you negotiate with. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So be a little brave. Need to email in a way that's professional and direct, but don't negotiate via email. We want to stay away from that if we can.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
You did say though that we should get in writing what the salary agreement is, so
Yes.
don't negotiate, but ultimately have some sort of written documentation for what the negotiation concluded with.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so let's, if we're thinking about it in order, so I get a phone call, I'm making this up a little bit, but I get a phone call where I made an offer. I'm excited, I asked to see it in writing. It's for, the offer is sent to me with the salary and any fringe benefits. I read it over, I look at my bottom line, I'm ready to negotiate. I send an email asking to schedule time to talk about the offer or slash salary. I'm on the phone, we negotiate, let's say something changes, right? And I'm offered an additional salary or something else you're negotiating for, and you ask for that in writing to confirm the change, and that's the document that you sign.
So when we schedule for a time to talk,
Mhm.
it's okay to use the word salary. I would like to talk about salary, or just
Absolutely.
generally talk. Okay.
Well, I think you can say, thank you so much, I'm very excited. I was wondering if I can schedule a time to talk to you about the offer and salary. I mean, these people do this all the time, like particularly in a recruiting role. So, I don't know, I'm dating myself a little bit, so apologies, but I'm a big fan of The Godfather. And so, it's not personal, it's just business, right? It's personal to us, right? It's very much personal to us. But for people who are in hiring roles, they are having these conversations as managers, as HR professionals very frequently. They are told someone's turning down an offer, they're told acceptances, they're referring for negotiations. This is their job. And so it's novel for us because maybe we don't do it as often, depending on how many jobs we've applied for or times we've negotiated, so that's challenging and we're in new waters. But for them, it's business. It's what they do every day. And so when you're going into this, remember, it's not personal, it's just business. We're going to take the Godfather approach a little bit to having these conversations. Please tell me there are people in here who've seen the Godfather. Thank you. I'm not going to be able to use that anymore. It really bums me out. All right. In terms of preparation for negotiation, here's another dating myself moment. Does anyone remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books? Yeah, okay, but not The Godfather, really, guys? Where, you open a page and it says, if you walk through the door, turn to page 43. If you decide to go through the river, turn to page 87, right? You go and that kind of determines your path. It can be helpful to kind of choose your own adventure, tree out your negotiation conversation. So if they say no, what is my response? What is my bottom line? If they say yes and this, what am I going to say? If they say yes, but so outline that out for yourself and practice it a little bit so you're prepared for the different scenarios that could come up. And having it written down can sometimes be just a good place to come back to if you feel yourself getting stuck. Like, okay, what was important to me in this game? Right, I need to stay focused on this particular issue. It's just a way to, I'm a visual person, so the idea of walking into the conversation, just holding onto a phone and nothing else is not the way that I would feel most comfortable. So no, there are lots of good ways to do that. What are some of my other must-have tips? When you are asking for more salary in particular, having a justification and evidence for that ask is very important. Let's pretend that this is the scariest negotiation situation ever, and all of you are the employer and I am the candidate, right? If you were the manager or HR professional, and I was on the phone with you, I'm very excited about the opportunity, I was wondering if there's any flexibility with salary, and you say, actually, there is some flexibility. Choose your own adventure tree, I moved down to like step 2, right? Then I say something effective, would $5,000 more work?
Straight up.
Straight up. How would that go over for you all? Maybe okay, maybe not. Depends on the industry, depends on the person, right? But if I say, based on some research that I did, right? Here's some information that I found for other folks in this industry, in this, with this title, and here are some experiences that I'm bringing that I think will make me uniquely qualified to do this well. I was wondering if there is flexibility enough for something between X amount and X amount for an increase. You're a lot more powerful in negotiation when you have evidence. It's kind of like interviews. When people talk about their strengths, but they sound like a bunch of buzzwords? Like, give me an example of a strength you have. I'm an epic problem solver. Ugh. Right? Like, everyone cringes a little. But if, you ask me that question and I say, I think one of the strengths that I have is my ability to problem solve. A place that I've done that previously is through X course project where I was responsible for, or X job, or X group, right? Where I did this, and I think that prepares me well for this opportunity. But if they have a system in place to pay someone on an ongoing basis, I would have to believe it wouldn't be too hard to get you connected to that or to ask for that. I think that's perfectly appropriate to ask for.
And what about just increasing the salary?
Absolutely. And same general guidelines apply with your research and evidence, how you want to move forward with that, absolutely. And those can be 2 separate asks too. If you want to start with increasing the amount, and if they say, let's say they say there is flexibility, you do that and say, I was also wondering, I think you can ask for that. Yes, sir?
What does HR generally mean when they say, this is the amount that we're authorized to give? Does that mean that actually they can go to a higher level and get a higher authorization, or is that their way of saying that's it?
Actually, I don't know. I would have, no, but truly.
Because that, I just went through that.
Yeah,
recently, so.
I would say, I would ask that clarification section, in terms of authorization, does that mean there is no flexibility, this is the number for any candidate who would accept this role, or is there a mechanism to ask for additional funds if that were to be authorized? I think that's a great question to ask.
Okay.
Yes.
So I know every company and industry is different, but you kind of mentioned this earlier, that there are kind of gender differences in terms of negotiating. And I'm wondering, if you have any insight into, like I said, every company is different, but globally, do you give different advice to men and women about negotiating?
Yes. I think, I have my most recent, do you guys mind if I pull something up really quick? And this is not the be all end all, watch this no longer work, but. Apologies for watching me type. I'm a terrible public typer, so you will see me backspace fair enough here. I have read different things about this in the past 6 months, about advice that's different based on gender. Some of it I don't agree with. but I'm an N of 1 as well, and I want to acknowledge that, and so you will hear different, I think, different advice about that. If this worked, guys, I'm going to give myself a gold star on Wednesday. Oh, no, I was so close. You know what, fine. When in doubt, Google will do better, right? Oh, they updated it, that's why. Okay. All right. My position on why I believe women in particular should negotiate, I don't necessarily have different tactics specifically. I know it's received differently when women negotiate. That part I can't control. You can go by state and see what it means to not negotiate and what it costs you through time. So one of the reasons I tell women in particular to negotiate is because of the wage gap that already exists. But if I could have negotiated for an extra $2,000 over X amount of time, over X years, over X months, that's why. But if you want to hang out after, I've got some good stuff on. I won't hold you guys hostage for that. Yes, sir.
Is there any research done on when walking away from a salary negotiation? If, let's say, that the amount, for you personally really is just too low.
Yes.
And you authentically know it's too low
Yeah.
and you're walking away. Is there any research done about how often actually is that offer completely gone, or do they, every now and then do come back and say, look, we really want your assets and your skills, and how about, is there any research done about that? Do you know?
Research, I don't want to say, because I think I might be wrong. I'm sure there is, but I'm not familiar with it. Anecdotally, yeah. I mean, no one in a hiring role wants to just keep interviewing forever. And that's your leverage point. Like, no one goes in and goes, man, I hope this person doesn't accept. Like, when you found your candidate, like, you really want them to move forward with you. Sometimes there is no, you know what I mean? Like, this is the salary, we literally can't move it, we're so sorry to lose you. Like, that certainly happens. If there is flexibility and they were just keeping it behind the scenes, I suppose that can happen too, but I don't want to say with any certainty about how often that happens, because I think I'd be making it up. Okay? So we've done the hard-hitting stuff. I hope you feel a little, the words we used at the beginning, a little less of that and a little more prepared as you walk through this process. Keep in mind, if you're negotiating, let's go back to this place. You got a job offer. All of your work has gotten you to that point, so congratulations. Don't forget that this is a positive experience to be in, and negotiation doesn't have to be adversarial. Should is a powerful word. I know I'm telling you that I recommend you negotiate, so I'm going to own that a little bit, but hopefully this gets you started. So please let me know. I'm going to hang out for a few minutes if you have any questions, but good luck with finals and all other things you're doing, and thanks for taking time out of your day.
Thank you.
Excuse me a sec.
Not only did I give you a strength, I gave you evidence. And it's not bragging when you have evidence, right? For negotiation, use evidence to back up what you're asking for, right? Research that you've done, conversations that you've had, unique experiences that you're bringing to the table. Yeah.
How is that conversation different when you're negotiating a pay raise rather than in starting salary? Where they like already know what you do because you already do it for them.
So I think I focus on a few things. I still want to do my homework a little bit, because let's say you're in a pay raise situation where you know that someone with a similar job title is making more money. Like, I've had some conversations around the university and know that similar job titles are offered between X and Y. This is where I currently am. Here are some things I've done over the course of the past year that not only represent doing a good job within the listed responsibilities I have, here are some places I've gone above and beyond. I think could be a way to do that as well, or taken on extra responsibility. For those of you who have worked at places where there's been a lot of turnover and you've had to, you had one job, now you have 1.5. Those types of moments, or you've had to take on a new skill, take a new class, things that are beyond that. I focus on that as well. But showing that you've done well within the context, and frankly, sometimes people give their person that they're doing their evaluations with, if they don't have ongoing feedback conversations, you're only having this conversation once a year, it's easy to forget the crazy season you had in September when we're in May, right? And so it's also educating them and reminding them about what that looked like over the course of a full year, not just where you are right now, particularly if evaluation times come during relatively calm seasons, and you've had to put in additional work over the course of 12 months. People need reminding. September was rough, or whatever the case is. It's a great question.
Is that also, in this part of the process, say they've already given you the salary and you have a competing offer, is that the time that you mentioned that, or earlier?
I think it can be part of your research and evidence, and so, I've done my research, here's what I know, I've also received an offer you can even frame it within a range if you don't want to give it specific, between X dollars and X dollars that I currently have. You're my first choice because, why are you interested in an organization can sometimes be, and so if I want to work with you so that we can come to something that works both for you, because you really are my top choice in terms of moving forward. So I want to bring up the offer in terms of the evidence and also frame it into why I want to be here, which I think tends to resonate with folks as well. How we doing?
Can I ask something?
Please.
So, I don't know why I foresee this happening, but and the answer might differ for each person understanding. So is it common practice, when you were talking about salary, but I accept an offer from a company that's lower than what I expect, but it's the company I want to work with 100%,
Yep.
Fortune 500, and I rely on myself just to work up that ladder. Is that common? I've already rebutted. They say, no, I can't offer you 5,000 more, so we're past that stage.
Yeah.
But it's the company I want, so maybe I'm sacrificing some of that fun money you call it, but I'm making my bottom line. So is that common practice to work my way up? Or
It really depends. It depends on the individual, truly.
Yeah.
To me, values play such an important and often unspoken role in career decision making. So I'm willing to take a little less money if it means spending more time with my family. I'm willing to take a little less money if it means working for this organization. One question I'm asking in that case is, how does professional development look like and how often does it happen within that company? So I understand there's no flexibility with salary. Can you tell me what a typical career progression looks like for someone in this role and the frequency of reviews or how often promotions tend to happen? Because if I know, and here's the thing, your emotional intelligence doesn't go away in professional contexts. Everyone in this room can tell when someone's kind of faking it a little bit, right? Maybe you've had a professor where you're like, I don't think you know this stuff as well as you say right now, right? Or other experiences in the workplace where you're like, does this person know what they're talking about? And so you need to trust also your internal judgment in those places. So if you're asking those questions and not getting an answer that you feel comfortable with, you can ask for, it sounds like there's a lot of flexibility. Would it be possible for you to put me in touch with someone who's been promoted, I would love to talk to them about their experience. You really are my top choice. I want to work with this brand. I just know that moving up and moving forward and growing professionally is really important to me.
Just to follow up, how long of a, like after they give you the offer, they expect a response in 24 hours, 48 hours?
You know, this varies a little bit. I've seen everything from we want to know in 24 hours. If I were an employer, I would give more time than that. That's something that you should ask for. And so let's say you're having the initial conversation, you could say, you know, what's your timeline for hearing back from me? And if they say tomorrow, and you need more time to speak with others or just sit with the offer and get it in writing and say, you know, I'm really excited to move forward. I just know I want to take a closer look at this, speak with family, and get back to you as soon as possible. Could X date work? I think you can propose it. Just don't propose something that's too soon for you. Like in essence, you know, trying to like be a helpful partner. If you need more time, ask for it. I think that's something that employers are usually pretty good with. I think asking for like a month is a little much. You know, like I think there are limits because people need you in those roles. They need you to start. They want you to start, and so there might be limits to what they can offer in terms of time to think. But I know in hiring roles that I've had, I wanted to give people as much time as they need because I want to know that they want to work where I work and don't feel forced into it. Not everybody's built that way. But typically I'll say, you know, if it's like a Monday, I'll be like, how would by Friday sound? You know, like give a few days, and if it's before, great. But I would really like to hear from you by 5 p.m. at the end of the week. Things not to do. Don't make an ultimatum unless you're willing to follow through. That is, especially for roles you're currently in. Like if I don't see an increase of X dollars, I'm leaving. If you say that, you need to be prepared to leave, right? And so beware of ultimatums. And remember, Godfather moment, it's not personal, it's just business. Usually if we are in ultimatum space, we are not thinking in a business perspective, we're thinking in a personal perspective. So taking a step back from that. Sometimes good negotiation means accepting. Sometimes good negotiation means saying, no, thank you, I really appreciate your time. Sometimes good negotiation means you get what you want. Sometimes it means gets part of what you want. Sometimes it means you don't get what you want, but you move forward in the way that's best for you. Outcome is not necessarily connected to if you negotiated good enough. There are things that are outside of our control as candidates, right? But by being prepared and frankly practicing a little bit, speaking in a way that's collaborative and frankly being authentic, I think that makes a difference. Also, I dare say, don't bring up rent as a reason why you should be negotiating for more money. Because everybody's got rent, right? Talk more about your experiences and what you bring to the table and research you've done about equivalent salaries, etc. But using cost of living isn't necessarily a great way to like advocate for yourself in the salary space. It can be something that you talk about more from a transportation or relocation help kind of space, but that's just something that I've seen where sometimes managers are like, we all have to, you know, like that's not unique to you, that doesn't advocate for you in a way that's connected to your skills.
Same thing with loans?
Yeah.
Same thing.
And also ask about programs for loan support and repayment. Sometimes if you get your graduate degree while working for your employer, you can apply for support for that if you stay a certain amount of time. Read those. Sometimes I send you a lot of paper. Read it all. It's worth doing, especially when you're excited. Anything that I have not talked about that you were like, I came to this workshop to get this one question answered and she has not answered it.
You gave the example of the $5,000, asking for
Yeah.
an additional $5,000.
Yeah.
What's like a reasonable range to ask for?
I think it depends on the research that I find, but let's say it's close. Like I'm usually in the $5,000 to $7,000 range. But if there's a significant difference from the research that I've done, like say 10, 15 grand, like or more, I would hope not, but something like that, then I will sometimes, well, one option can be to ask about how they put the compensation package together. And what is based, can you tell me a little bit more about the offer, how you put it together, kind of your salary benchmarking? I would love to learn a little bit more. But 5 to 7 is where I tend to hang out when it's in range that's close.
And what would you say is like a typical dialogue after you get past the first, I have these experiences
Yep.
and I've done this research.
Yep.
I was wondering if there's any chance
Yeah.
I could get that,
Yeah.
the additional 5,000. Then what does the dialogue look like after that?
So probably what happened before is they said they're open to negotiate, you know what I mean, the salaries,
Yeah.
like they can do something. If that's the case and you ask, then that's where our adventure tree comes into, they might say, I'll have to get back to you. Isn't something you might hear, I need to take this to human resources and get more information. They might say, yes, we can do that. If that's the case, then, great, I'm so excited, I'm happy to accept, at that salary. Would you be willing to resend the documents and I'll get it back to you as soon as possible? Because you need it in writing when you sign off. You get it?
Should you try and be firm? Like, is there any chance you're going to risk the position?
Oh, I didn't answer that. Thank you for bringing that up. So I haven't seen it. I've heard of it in the news. It's one of those moments, right, where you're on Yahoo or Google or something like that, and you're like, person rejected from job after negotiating, but I've been here 6 years, I've not seen that happen. I think you can really turn someone off if you're not professional about it, and if you're not using evidence, and you're not speaking collaboratively, frankly. But I have not worked with a student or alumni here who has had an offer withdrawn because they negotiated. Again, because they do this a lot. And actually, that's a nugget that I almost forgot on the last page. If you get stuck, like let's say, again, you're using our emotional intelligence, you're in that moment and you're going, this isn't going well. Like something's not, you just have that feeling like we're stuck, we're not moving forward, this negotiation isn't moving forward, and what do I do now? We've got a few nuggets for how to move forward. One of the phrases, and this is my like North Country self coming out a little bit, but if there's an elephant in the room, don't let it become a herd. Meaning that if something's off, name it so you can control the messaging moving forward. So if you can tell that the person seems put off, and you're like, rather than just pretending that's not happening and kind of letting more elephants into the room, saying, I can tell that I've said something that I think has not made the impact that I would have hoped. Can we take a step back? What have I, and just go from there. I forget what's the way. That wasn't my intention. Can you help us move forward? I really do want to work together with you on this, right? But if you just let things snowball, one, that's not good professional practice, but two, you're kind of losing your leverage as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you're really far apart, name that. It feels like we're really far apart. Is there an opportunity to maybe meet in the middle? Again, as long as the middle meets your salary requirements. Yes, ma'am.
What do you do if you keep getting sort of like bounced around? Like you go to your hiring person and you're like, let's negotiate, and they're like, oh, I don't know, gotta talk to HR, and then like you are not the direct line to HR.
Yeah.
How do you prevent it from being stopped because other people are discussing it?
So let's say I have that conversation, right? And they're like, I'll get back to you. I'm going back to my office and I'm writing them an email thanking them for their help and saying, I look forward to hearing from you. I'll follow up with you in the next week or so about next step. Like I'm putting it in writing, like I'm not negotiating in writing, but I'm putting the process in writing so then I can reply to them if I don't hear anything. Hi, so-and-so, just checking in about where we are in this process. Really want to move forward, particularly for a place you're already working. Yes, ma'am?
Is it typical to negotiate like tuition reimbursement? Like, oh, they offer X, but I'm really looking more for Y?
It can be, yes. I mean, at Georgetown, it's pretty standard, so I don't know what that would look like. It's possible that professional development funds from the office itself could be applied towards tuition. So if they have a tuition plan in place, they might say like, that's what it is for all employees. But you can ask for additional support potentially. And, this would be for additional coursework to supplement the tuition benefit plan that already exists. And is that something that's negotiable?